Purple Tree Group, connecting people, building communities, helping clients to build multi-generational wealth through real estate.
Today we have a special guest, Mike Yosher, who's been a former mortgage advisor, helping mutual clients in residential and commercial side. And his focus has been on private lending, creating solutions for short-term needs that has been really missing in the industry. My name is Mitra with Purple Tree Group Real Estate, and we are pleased to have Mike Yosher. Mike, can you tell us more about you?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Mitra. It's a pleasure. So a little bit about my background. I started out with the banks as a mortgage advisor for a number of years. And after the regulations started to tighten around 2015 or so, I left the banks and ventured out into the brokerage space and really just focused on anything that was sort of outside the typical, bank structure. So private funding for land development, for developers, and just general, alternative type of private funding. And ultimately, I ended up landing on micro mortgage lending, which are essentially mortgage loans up to $100,000. And that's been the niche that I focused on the last little while. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you, Mike. By the way, our eyeglasses are matching almost.
Almost, yeah. It's these are at the suggestion of my wife. This is like the style that I needed. So I said, okay.
That's perfect. So, Mike, tell us more about why private lending.
Sure. So, generally people need private lending when there is typically a need for speed. There's a reason that they need the funding quickly. Sometimes it could be sort of urgent home maintenance, like a leaky roof or a furnace breakdown. Maybe it could be a life event where there's a spousal buyout. Sometimes it could be a deposit loan. Sometimes, as you know, being a realtor, people put offers down, and when it's accepted and you have to put down the check the next day, all of a sudden their money goes, elsewhere. And then, we got to get the money into the trust account, within 24 hours, right? So lots of reasons people need, private lending. Another great one is also if they need a quick reno. As you know, before you're listing a house, let's say if the house is, a little bit beat up and could use a reno, you may not want to send the client to the bank because it'll take them a month to refinance. And even if they go through that process and they are willing to wait, they may not qualify due to the regulations in terms of they don't have enough income to qualify and so on. And so if within 24 to 48 hours, they can have $20, $30, $50,000 in their bank account to do a quick reno on their home to increase, the sale price, that could be worthwhile to some of your clients.
Absolutely. All through either is flip or renovation, major renovation, or a deposit for a property that it took months to find. Definitely, I can see how it would create some peace of mind. What are the pitfalls of signing up for a private lending?
Yeah, so to get a private mortgage, first of all, you need to have, first and foremost, you need to have collateral. You need to have some equity in your home. So let's say you got some equity and now you're saying, okay, I'm ready for a private mortgage. But not all private mortgages are created equal. Pitfalls is, first of all, you have to know who you're dealing with. There's a huge difference between if you're lending from a company versus you're lending from an individual. For instance, an individual could be a lot more flexible in terms of how much they lend. But let's say things aren't going as well, and all of a sudden there's a problem. You need your lender to be patient with you. An individual is just a human being, have a bad day and all of a sudden tell you like, no, heck no, I'm not waiting for you. Whereas when you're borrowing from a company, they would have policies and procedures in place, and it would go through a more systemized type process. So it's important to know who you're borrowing from. That's one. And then the other thing that's important to know is how to get out of this private mortgage. You got into it, you took the money, right? But what's your exit plan? So it's very, very important to have a defined exit strategy. And sometimes people don't have one, unfortunately, and they get into very sticky situations. So it's important that you work with your mortgage professional, because if your exit is to, refinance, you have to make sure that your broker sets you up properly so that you can then pay off the private mortgage. If your exit is sale, so it's important you work with the right realtor that you can sell the property for value that would pay off all of your debts and still leave money for the homeowner, right?
That's right. Thank you for that. So, Mike, of course, there are fees associated to any private lending, any loans. So what are the fees associated, and does it differ if you go with an individual versus a bigger company?
Yeah, so typically on a private mortgage, you typically need two lawyers, right? So there's legal fees, there's registration fees, there's discharge fees, there's lender fees, there's broker fees. And all those things vary just depending on the size of the loan, the location, who the lender is, and so on. There are options where you can get this done for smaller amounts without legal fees, but then you may pay more on the interest rate or on the fee or on the lender fees, right? So it really just depends. But I will say it's very important to work with individuals that are really working in your interest and getting you the best deal possible for your situation. Because let's face it, not all brokers are created equal, just like, as you know, not all realtors are created equal. So.
True. So you mentioned that you are doing private lending that could really vary anywhere from $30,000 to, I don't know, $1 million.
Yeah.
What is your minimum for private lending? What's the minimum term?
Mm-hmm.
And is there any option for prepayment of the interest? Can you tell us more about that?
Great question. There's a couple things to unpack there. So in terms of the venture that I'm involved with now with LendHub, we focus on the smaller loan amounts. So our minimum loan amount is $10,000. We'll do them as small as $10,000 if someone needs, some moving expenses, because it's not about the loan size. It's about, really filling that gap, for that client and providing that solution quickly. Right. So under that program, it's, anywhere as little as $10,000 to a maximum of $100,000. But a general private mortgage go up to $1 million or $2 million. If you own a house that's worth $5 million and you want, a $3 million loan against it, that's doable through private lending as well. Depends on the situation.
Got it. So
you asked about prepaid interest.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's that kind of takes us back to in terms of like your defined plan of how to get out of the mortgage. So, whether you choose to take prepaid interest depends on your cash flow. It really depends on, what are your monthly payments? Can you afford these payments? And most important, is there a risk that my cash flow may change? And if so, we don't want to fall into default. So that's when you should consider prepaid interest. So prepaid interest technically, increases your overall cost of borrowing because you're essentially paying all of your payments up front. But what you've done is you've given yourself, peace of mind. You know that so long as you're paying your property taxes, your other mortgages in the property and your fire insurance, you know that you're not going to default because your mortgage payment has been taken care of.
Thank you. Mike, is there an option for renewal of private lending?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, before even talking about renewals, I don't know if you've seen the articles recently in the marketplace. A lot of private lenders are essentially nervous about the state of the market, and they're saying, hey, we're not renewing. We want our money back. And that, typically happens more often with individual private lenders as opposed to, established companies. Even though the borrower may be a perfect borrower and has made all their payments on time, the private lender may say, you know what, I'm just not renewing you, right? And that's a huge risk to somebody. We've been blessed with such a great real estate market, as we know. It's been doing the hockey stick for all these years. And now we've hit a point where it dropped a little bit, and hopefully we're stabilizing. But it's kind of a long-winded answer to renewal. Typically, a private lender would and should offer a renewal, given the borrower has been making timely payments and given there hasn't been any kind of market catastrophe, right? So it's important to find out again who you're dealing with, and to find out have your broker really inquire on the likelihood of renewals, because let's face it, your exit plan may not always work out. If somebody borrowed money, say early in 2022 and thought they were going to sell for a certain price, as you know, there was a peak and all of a sudden things drop. And so in those situations, in those cases, the exit plan may not have worked out. So it's important to work with a private lender who's going to be flexible enough to work with you should the exit plan not work out exactly as planned.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, not only is important to know the options, exit plan, and at the same time, the terms and condition when you are doing private lending, because things will change.
Yeah,
and nowadays we hear individuals, real estate lawyers, mortgage workers, everybody can offer private lending.
Right.
But at the end is our due diligence to make sure that we do our homework.
Yeah.
If we are going to be in need of private lending, to make sure the exit strategy, the terms and conditions, and that all that needs to be negotiated ahead of time.
Right.
That we know we are well prepared.
And I'm glad you brought up terms and conditions, because one of the important terms to know is when you're getting out of the mortgages, are there any penalties, or is there an open term, right? Because typically private mortgages will have some sort of penalty. Some lenders, may charge a little bit more on a rate or a fee, but then they'll have a fully open term. And so those are all things you got to take into consideration. It's one thing to get in, but on the way out, what are the penalties? What are the discharge fees, and so on? I mean, as you know, a regular bank is going to charge you a discharge fee on the way out, and so will a private lender. It's important to know what that amount is. Is that going to be, $300, $400, $500, or is that going to be $2,000, $3,000? Right? I've seen all kinds of wacky stuff in the industry.
True. So thank you for covering a lot of issues that is very important to know about private lending. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I just think that it's important that you are working with trusted sources, and that you're working with folks who are professionals and who have your best interest at heart, in order to find the best solution for your situation.
Thank you. That's true. So creative solution matters. Having short-term plan for emergency situations, or if you have any plan on purchasing a home, needing for a deposit, or doing major renovation, is important to have the right people along your side, and making sure that whatever decision you make is going to be literally following your interest in heart. So, Mike, can you please share your information with us here, that if anybody needs to connect with you, they know how to reach you?
Sure. I mean, they can look up our company, which is www.lend-hub.ca. So www.lend-hub.ca. But we do not work with borrowers directly. We always go through an agent or referral source.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions and you want to know more how to connect with Mike Yosher, you can call us at 416-832-9292 or hello@purpletree.group. See you next time.
Purple Tree Crew, connecting people, building communities, helping clients to build multi-generational wealth through real estate.